So I will go ahead and start. I am filling in for Abby. She's our multitasker and she couldn't be here and doing her training at the same time. So I'm her right-hand man. And I am stepping in to go ahead and get our wonderful webinar started with Miss Melissa. And I would just want to say that I got the chance to speak with Melissa ahead of time, and I thoroughly enjoyed all the new techniques and knowledge that I gained from her. So I'm hoping today that everyone will be able to get the same newfound knowledge that I received and be able to use these techniques on a day-to-day basis that will help with any type of anxiety or any type of negative energy that you may have. This will definitely help with all of that. So with no further ado, I would like to present to you guys Miss Melissa Olson and let her take it away with her EFT tapping.
Thanks, Mimi. I would like to thank Cassie Gobb, who I think referred me to Clarity Fitness, and thank Clarity Fitness for inviting me to come today and talk about tapping. So let me just say that Mimi mentioned that tapping can be used for anxiety as well as for lots and lots of other things. But at the end of today's presentation, we're going to focus on one way to use tapping to reduce and potentially eliminate cravings. So that's going to be the concrete exercise that we do toward the end. And so if anybody wants to grab something that they might have at home that they want to work on reducing their cravings for, or even eliminate their cravings for, that's something that you can try to run and grab before we get to the end. It can actually be really effective to have the item right there in front of you. Okay, so let me just say that I am Melissa Lester Olson. I'm a psychotherapist in Midtown. And around 2013, I rediscovered EFT and decided to start getting a lot of training. And that's exactly what I've been doing ever since 2013, believe it or not, training and training and training. I am an advanced practitioner. I am certified by EFT International, and I am very close, although I'm stretching this out as long as humanly possible, but I'm very close to becoming a trainer. And so that's exciting because it'll mean that I'll just have more ways of sharing EFT with people. But I've basically been talking nonstop about EFT since I started training. And the reason for that is that it basically transformed my therapy practice, which has become over the years more and more, for me, trauma focused. And one of the things that I'll mention multiple times today, because it's one thing I do want you to leave with, is that tapping can be used for a wide variety of purposes. And I have a slide, at least one slide about that. But I do use it probably predominantly for trauma resolution because I'm licensed and I'm trained, and that's kind of a focus of what I do. But coaches use tapping for different purposes. There are EFT tapping practitioners who specialize in almost anything you can think of. And so people can actually develop these real specific niches with tapping because it's incredibly versatile. Okay, and so having said that, because it transformed my practice and my work with clients, in the last couple of years, I founded a nonprofit organization called Tapping Works. Actually, it's called Tap Into Community right now, but we are transitioning to call ourselves Tapping Works. And the goal of the nonprofit is really to disseminate tapping that's taught really effectively, really ethically, and super, super affordably. So our goal is to try to engage a really broad and diverse audience. And to do some training, share some tools, provide community support, and just kind of become a hub for all things tapping. But we want to be able to reach out to folks who don't have the ability to actually pay for therapy, and that I think is probably most of the world. So, you know, believing that everybody deserves relief, this is kind of my passion project at the moment. Cassie Gobb, who's a life coach, is on my board of directors, as is Lisa Reed, who is a licensed clinical social worker. We are also working with Michelle Nelson, who's a licensed clinical social worker. And we are getting ready to bring on another board member, and we are also talking to somebody about a potentially exciting collaboration. So that's me, that's what I'm up to. Thanks for coming, and I hope you leave excited and curious about tapping. So here we go. Spacebar, right, Mimi? Uh-oh. Mimi, I'm tapping my spacebar and nothing's happening.
Try clicking with your mouse, or do you have a mouse with yours, or just the?
Oh, okay, that worked for some reason. Thank you. Okay, so what is tapping? Maybe some of you have heard of it, maybe some of you haven't heard of it. It's also called emotional freedom techniques, which I happen to think is a little bit of a hokey name. So I think tapping is a little more of a neutral name for what we're talking about. So what is it exactly? It is actually a combination of all of these mechanisms that you see on the screen right now, and really beautifully and very elegantly combines them all into just the simplest procedure that I'm going to demonstrate for you. But we are tapping on acupressure points in the body. We are activating a source of distress that we want to eliminate. And so that's where the imaginal exposure comes in. So it could be a thought, it could be a feeling, it could be a memory, it could be a body sensation, it could be, like we're going to work on today, it could be a craving. So if we don't have the object right there in front of us, or if we're not already activated, imagining gets us to connect with our source of distress. And then what happens is we can experience any combination of the following: somatic, body-focused sensations. You think about a particular thing or feeling, and you get this weird feeling in your stomach, or you end up with tightness in your chest. That's a somatic, body-focused sensation. Or you think about it and an emotion bubbles up. You feel sad, or you feel scared. The other piece of it is thoughts, and we can always tap on thoughts actually pretty effectively as well. So what's actually happening when we're tapping are all of these mechanisms, but I like to say that I think the most profound one, and the one that almost everybody experiences right away, is that our nervous system is first either activated if we're trying to open something up so we can deal with it, and then it is deactivated, meaning that our whole nervous system gets slowed down. And so tapping is a great tool for emotional regulation, whether you're an adult, whether you're a little kid. And actually, tapping with little kids is incredibly effective, and we teach it in the schools, a lot of the school systems. And it's a great tool for parents to teach to their kids and do with their kids in an age-appropriate way. Information processing, this is a reference to the fact that new information tends to, I like to say, come from the unconscious right to the conscious brain very quickly when we're tapping. So these are things that are we know, but we know at a level that we can't actually access. Tapping makes a lot more information accessible, and then it also helps us to reprocess information that we were already aware of. And it does this by creating cognitive shifts, which I like to call aha moments. Memory reconsolidation is about it can be about pieces of memories kind of filling in where we couldn't fill them in before. Eye movements are very easy to observe as we're tapping with a client. And so there's definitely overlap with EMDR in a couple of these different mechanisms. Trance is, trance is like a whole separate webinar all by itself, of course. But trance and hypnosis can become a part of tapping, and sort of organically. And then there are people that actually teach a hybrid that is called hypno tapping. There's somebody who teaches it locally. There are a couple of people all over around the country actually that teach this sort of hybrid of tapping and hypnosis. And the last mechanism that we know is happening with tapping is sensory integration, meaning that I'm gonna just assume that's sort of self-explanatory for people. But all of our senses do get engaged, and the sensory stimulation does get integrated into whatever it is that we're trying to reprocess. Okay, so that is to say that tapping is a real thing. It's real. And these are some of the ways that folks have been using tapping for the last 30 years. I mentioned trauma processing and resolution, which is different than just coping. We're talking about actually resolving things that are stored in the nervous system so that they leave the nervous system and they're gone, never to be triggered again. Processing emotions and thoughts quickly. Tapping is a great self-help tool for averting panic attacks, for eliminating phobias. In fact, the research on phobia is that tapping can usually eliminate a phobia in one session, which is kind of remarkable. Reducing or eliminating pain. I have a great story about this that I'm going to share real quickly. When I came back from my first official training in 2013, my tapping training from Colorado, as soon as a therapist gets trained in something, then every client has to be using that method, right? Because we're excited. So I incorporated tapping with this gal, and we had been doing some pretty serious trauma resolution work. And then one day and then she was doing a lot of it on her own at home as well. And one day she called me and she said, or she might have texted and said, "I'm really sorry, but you remember I told you my back gets thrown out once or twice a year because 26 years ago I was in a car accident and it was really bad." She said, "I can't come to my appointment. I'm stuck at home." So I texted her back, I think, and I said, "Well, or we might have spoken, and I might have said, I said, I know this might sound a little crazy. Have you thought about tapping on the back pain because you've had so much success with tapping for these other really serious issues?" And when I say success, what I mean is that her distress level had reduced dramatically. And of course she said to me, "Oh, Melissa, come on, this is real back pain. I'm stuck at home, I can't move." And, I said, "Well, you're not going anywhere. So you don't have anything to lose." And I thought I would mention it. So the next day she texted me and she said, "I don't have any back pain anymore. And I couldn't wait till our next session to share that with you." And she had never not had back pain since the car accident, but so it was kind of this low-grade chronic pain. And then once or twice a year, it would get so bad that she couldn't move. So her back pain was gone. Of course, she was shocked, and I was totally shocked. But in that kind of a case, what tapping is doing is it's processing the emotional, this is probably, some people would probably argue with this, but I think that the tapping processed the emotional component of her physical pain. That's one explanation. Yeah, I think that's actually the accurate explanation. So she and I worked together a little bit longer, and then I kind of got lucky because we finished working for a while, and then she came back 7 years later. And so I was able to ask her about her back pain 7 years later, and she said she never had any back pain ever again. So this was a woman who cured her 26-year back pain in one session. Well, she was at home for a day, tapping. So chronic pain, it really, really works. Grounding. People who tap report feeling more embodied, more grounded, more landed in their own being and body. Performance enhancement. People use it for career enhancement, sports enhancement, testing, performance, and before speaking engagements. In fact, anytime I speak in front of a large room, I'm at the front of the room tapping my own anxiety away while the room is filling up, and it just works. So that's the good news. It just works. Today we're going to talk a little bit about reducing and eliminating cravings. Whatever your craving is for, you know, we all have go-tos that we use to comfort ourselves. And so if you can, I think that last one is gambling. I don't know if it's covered up. So if you can go grab whatever your craving is, otherwise we'll have you imagine the experience when we get there. Tapping is also used for people who are in sobriety and in recovery, and I have a colleague who uses it very effectively for aftercare in substance abuse programs. Okay, so it's pretty versatile. Okay, so here's what it looks like. It looks weird, and we tap first on the side of the hand. This is kind of the beginning of every round. And we start out by, we create a setup phrase, we call it, while tapping on the side of the hand. And the setup phrase is this. We state the problem, and then we also make some kind of validating, balancing statement together. So tapping on the side of the hand, we say, even though I'm eating more M&Ms than I really want to, I'm a good person anyway, right? Even though I really, really, really want to eat those Twinkies. This is where I'm at. So you're going to state the problem, and then you're going to make any kind of validating statement. A lot of times you'll hear or see people use a validating statement that sounds like even though I want to eat those M&Ms, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. I don't prefer that because most people, that's kind of a hard thing for most people to say. And it also reminds me of that Saturday Night Live character from 30 years ago, Stuart Smalley. So you want to say something that is true for you. We don't want you tapping on anything that isn't true for you. So if the best you can say is, even though I'm eating more M&Ms than I want to, or even though I really want to eat those M&Ms, this is how I feel. And it's okay to feel how I feel. Okay? So just make that statement work for you. There's two parts of it. One is the problem. The other is any kind of validation. Another thing this statement does is it separates the problem from you as a person, right? So we're separating those two things. You are not the problem. Okay, so this is where we do the setup phase, right here on the side of the hand. We only really need to tap 5 or 7 times. That's kind of the target, but we don't want you counting. We don't want you distracted. So just kind of ballpark it. And then the next spot we tap is here at the top of the head. Some people go straight to the inside of the eyebrow, but I go to the top of the head just because it's in a good order for me to remember. And when we get to the rest of the spots that I'm going to show you now, We're only focusing on the problem. Oh boy, I really want to eat those M&Ms. Okay? Oh boy, really want to eat those M&Ms. And then at the side of the eye, I am eating too many M&Ms. I really want to eat those M&Ms. And then under the eye is another acupressure point. Same thing. Oh gosh, those M&Ms, they're really calling my name. And then under the nose, right between the nose and the upper lip, is the next spot. Oh, M&Ms, 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 M&Ms. Middle of the chin. I want to go eat that whole bag of M&Ms right now. This is where I'm at. You don't have to be too rigid with the words, and you don't have to get too caught up in what words you're saying. Just focus on the problem. And then the last spot we're going to use today is right under, you find the collarbone, it's right under the collarbone, and just a couple inches apart, right here. Oh boy, I really want to eat those M&Ms. Really want those M&Ms. I think I might just eat the whole bag of M&Ms. Okay. So I'm going to take a little break here because I want to circle back. Now you notice number 2 on the slide says measure your distress level when you start. And I skipped that because I didn't want to tackle too much at once. But when we identify the problem and we're doing the setup phase here, when we get going, I really want to eat those M&Ms. Try to evaluate for yourself on a scale of 0 to 10 how intense that is right now, just in the moment, not in your whole lifetime or not, you know, last week on Thursday at that birthday party, but right now while you're tapping on it. How intense, I really want to eat those M&Ms. So for me, let's say it was like a 7. All those M&Ms. And the reason we're doing this, and you're going to want to jot that down or just kind of remember it for yourself, is that as we continue to tap and focus on the problem, those numbers are going to change, that number rather. So the number might go up if we end up sort of really cracking open that ravenous desire for those M&Ms. And that's okay. We're just talking about what's true, what's real, what we really feel. Okay? So maybe as I'm tapping, the number goes up to like 10. Oh, wow, I am definitely, I'm gonna eat those M&Ms. Okay. The number could also go down. The point is that sometimes it goes up before it starts to come down, but eventually it's going to come down. And it might be, so after, let's say a round of tapping, what we're gonna want you to do is now try to get real connected to really wanting those M&Ms and just re-rate it for yourself so that now you have something to compare. So maybe it was a 7, maybe now it's a 10, right? So if the number goes up, the key is to keep tapping until the numbers come down. And we're always shooting for 0. We're shooting for as close to 0 as we can possibly get. And you can even add the number into your setup phase. For example, oh boy, I want to eat those M&Ms now. It's like a 10. 10, 10, I'm going to eat those M&Ms. 10, I'm definitely going to eat those M&Ms. It's a 10. Okay, it's a definite. Along the way with tapping, you will begin to notice some shifts, right? For today, we're just going to focus on, we're going to keep it simple. So when I get to the more of the actual demonstration, I'll give you some specifics in terms of tapping. But the goal is to get the number down to 0. Okay. Do we want to stop now, Mimi, and see if anybody has any questions?
We can. No one has wrote anything in the chat box, but if anybody would like to unmute themselves, if you do have a question, Now is the time.
Or if you just want to type it in and let Mimi read it, that would be fine too. I want to make sure they're getting what they need.
So yes, during her presentation, you guys are more than welcome to type anything in the chat box, and I'll automatically see it, and then I'll go ahead and go ahead and stop Miss Melissa at any time, and she'll chime in with the answer. So if y'all want to do it that way, or if you have a question now while we're taking this break, by all means, go ahead and ask away. But I think everybody is still muted.
Okay.
I think everybody's good.
Okay. All right. So actually, this slide it usually answers the questions that usually bubble up right about now in the presentation. So tapping 5 to 7 times, right? But if you notice at one of the acupressure points that you really like tapping there, it feels good, you're getting a lot of relief, then by all means, keep tapping in that one spot, right? This is a highly adaptive technique, and it's important to notice how it's affecting you individually. A lot of people like to ask, can I tap on both sides? Does it matter which side? What if I tap here? What if I tap here? Which hand do I use? The answer is it doesn't matter. And I actually don't know why it doesn't matter. It might be that we're stimulating multiple meridians with each acupressure point. But if this feels better to you, by all means, do it bilaterally. If doing the tapping with your left hand feels better, do that. You can tap in any order, really. The order that I'm demonstrating is a pretty easy one to remember. Some people talk about like a question mark on the face. So you tap here, and then the inside of the eyebrow, and well, it's not really a question mark, is it? At any rate, this is the order that it's easier for me to remember it in. Forgetting a spot is fine. You want to tap with the amount of pressure that feels right to you personally. And notice if you get significant relief at a particular spot with a particular issue, then it's perfect to just hang out there, especially if you're going to continue to get relief in that one spot. Now, when you tap on a different issue, you might notice, oh, I'm getting more relief here at a different spot. Some people notice every single time they tap, there's a particular spot where they get significant relief. So adapt it to work for you. Okay, so what are we doing? We're tapping on acupressure points. These are actually the ends of the 10 largest energy meridians in the body. So that's why these are acupressure points. We are focusing and tracking your most intense awareness at the moment. We're triggering and activating incompletely processed experiences, emotions, thoughts, sensations. If you're already triggered and activated, you don't need to spend a lot of time getting into that place, because if you're activated, you're already in that place. And in that case, you can just do the tapping without needing to worry too much about what words to use, because if you're connected to the distress, it's already active in your body. Now with the tapping, what you're really doing is you're downward regulating your whole nervous system. Okay, don't forget to retest your intensity. You know, you'll know if your intensity is going up or down. So for yourself, you don't always need to jot down a number or give it a rating, but if you're working with somebody else, it's incredibly helpful to get a number from them as you're tapping, because it helps you to gauge what's happening with their level of distress. Okay, here we go. Research. So here are some names of folks who not only recommend, but also use tapping. I don't know who's on the call or who might watch this, but what we have here is basically a list of the who's who in trauma research these days. And also a Harvard psychiatrist who happens to use tapping for sports performance enhancement. I want to talk just for a minute about the great research on PTSD and tapping. There's a study that's been replicated 2 or 3 times that shows that, in short, combat veterans that are who have PTSD and who are exposed to 6 hours or 6 sessions of tapping, that after 6 sessions of tapping, 86% of them no longer meet the definition for PTSD. That was a randomized controlled trial. It has been repeated at least 2, I think 3 times. It has been peer reviewed, it has been published, and the 86% is kind of an amazing number. 6 sessions of tapping is not very much treatment. So the numbers are remarkable. Cortisol, the stress hormone that most of us are at least aware of, goes down by 25 to 50% with just a couple of rounds of tapping. That's incredible, right? And I don't know too many people who couldn't benefit from less stress hormone racing through their bodies. Also, this is a good time to talk about the fact that when your cortisol is lower and your nervous system is downward regulated, your immune system benefits from that. So the tapping actually increases your immunity resilience. PET scans. We know from looking at PET scans that parts of the brain that were previously activated by distressing stimuli are no longer, they don't light up anymore on PET scans after tapping. There's fascinating meridian research out of South Korea where they have actually identified real meridians, channels in the body where energy moves very, very quickly. And these meridians apparently do not correspond with any other part of our anatomy, but they can compare how fast energy moves through the body where they think meridians exist and where they don't think meridians exist. And the numbers are really dramatic. So what we know is happening is that energy is moving through the body very, very quickly when we're tapping. The research on cravings and on obesity, also fascinating out of Australia. Compared to CBT, this is interesting. What you can achieve with CBT in 6 months, you can achieve with tapping in 2 weeks, and the tapping results are sustained a year later. The CBT results are not sustained. So when you go back to the control group, they have resumed having problems with their cravings. When you go back to the tapping group, they often can't even remember what they were craving a year ago. It's just no longer an issue. So that is the research, which is very compelling. And so if anybody really wants to read the research, the place you want to go to is eftinternational.org. You can also go to ACEP, ACEP, which is the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, and they both have research pages. So I would say go read the research for yourself. And even better than reading the research is having the experience yourself, because it is an experiential modality. Okay, I think I'm going to skip this slide. I think I've covered all of that. Okay, what actually happens? In other words, what is going on when we're tapping? What might you experience when we're tapping? You might become activated if you weren't already activated. You will become deactivated if you were already activated when we started. You're going to feel calmer You're going to feel more in your body. You're going to feel more grounded. There might be some aha moments. You might notice somatic sensations in the body. And some of these are, there are many different ways to tap. And so the way that I'm going to show you to tap is going to be very sensory focused, because that's the safest way for us to have you tap at home without risking emotional overwhelm. So I'm going to show you a really concrete way to tap and keep yourself super safe while you do it. Some of these other ways of tapping are probably best done with a professional, because what we don't want to do is overactivate anybody when they don't have the resources that they need. If they can't sit with somebody in a room and have somebody kind of walk you through what's happening with the tapping. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Okay, so physical distress, emotions, all of that stuff might bubble up. Most people report feeling lighter, even to the point of a little bit lightheaded. Almost everybody I work with says they're extremely tired after a tapping session, because remember, even though you can't see the energy moving or the neurology changing, it's all happening very quickly and it is exhausting. Most people report feeling dehydrated, and some of the kind of funny things that happen when we're tapping because of all the energy moving quickly is yawning, coughing, burping, itching. Those can make for some funny moments and some humor when we're tapping, which is always nice. Okay, I just want to say a quick thing about ethics and scope of practice. We want to make sure that we're all using tapping within our own area of expertise, right? So we don't want to learn how to tap and then think, oh, I can go tap on anything with anyone, because if you weren't an expert in working with something before, tapping is not going to make you an expert in that thing now. So it's a tool that we want people to be able to incorporate if they're already working in the capacity of coach or therapist, or even just working with somebody else that you know. You want to make sure you don't end up in the deep end of the pool. And by that, I mean usually the past. If what is safer for you is to stay in the present or in the future. I want you to know personally how to calm your nervous system down really quickly with a strategy that we call touch and breathe. And I'm going to show that to you right now, because should anybody notice that they're kind of overactivated, I want you to have a tool that can kind of reverse that whole process and really, really, really slow your nervous system down. So using all the same points, no tap, just touch. So we touch and we take a long, slow, deep breath. And I want to encourage everybody to give this a try if you can. And then we touch and a long, slow, deep breath. And then the next spot, the inside of the eyebrow. Long, slow, deep breath. And then the outer corner of the eye, just touch. And then under the eye. under the nose. In the middle of the chin. And then our last spot for today is going to be right underneath the collarbone, maybe 2-3 inches apart. Touch, and a long, slow, deep breath. Okay, so now I am going to ask, let's see if we get any responses. What does everybody notice? What do you notice? Do you feel differently than before we did touch and breathe? What did anybody notice?
I don't know if anybody else did it, but I think anytime you do the touching, well, with the breathing with it, I think it automatically causes you to calm. Like it brings a calming sensation pretty much. So that's what I got first and foremost. I know breathing helps with that. And then the tapping kind of brings you into that moment more so. So
Yeah.
bring you present. And then the breathing then helps calm it.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Mimi. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's true. Most people notice kind of a slowing down, a lessening of anxiety, feeling of being more in their body. So that is touch and breathe, and I want you to have that tool in your back pocket. And now I think we're going to do a little tapping on cravings. So remember, you can tap on feelings, memories, thoughts, or physical sensations. Today, right now, we're going to practice focusing on those our senses. We're gonna use our senses because that's gonna keep us grounded in the present. So I want you to either, if you have the item you're craving with you, just take a look at the packaging. If you don't have it with you, try to imagine just looking at the packaging. And now notice how intense of a response you have to just the packaging. Excuse me. Okay, so if you can rate the intensity that you associate with just looking at the item or just imagining the item, jot that down for yourself. And now we're going to make a setup phrase just on this particular aspect, just looking at the packaging. So that could sound like, okay, even though I'm looking at that bag of M&Ms, and it's definitely calling my name, this is where I'm at. This is how I feel. So focus on the sensation of looking at the packaging, the shiny brown wrapper. Just looking at the brown wrapper makes me happy already, right? Just the shiny brown wrapper and all those colors. Even though I'm struggling with this, I know I'm a good person anyway. This is where I'm at. And now at the rest of the points, we're just going to describe the sight of the package. That shiny brown wrapper. I get excited just looking at that shiny brown wrapper and the ridges on the sides of the wrapper. There's always those ridges. That must be where they put the package together. Just looking at that bag of M&Ms makes me want to eat them. just seeing that package in the store, I can't walk by it. That brown, shiny packaging. I know it's inside. Just looking at that brown wrapper, makes me a little bit happy. I love that brown, shiny wrapper. And I don't even like the color brown. They always come in that brown, shiny wrapper. Okay, so now let's take a breath and a break. And try to re-rate the intensity that you are aware of just looking at that brown, shiny wrapper. Is it as appealing to you? Is it still, let's say it was a 7, is it still a 7? Did the number go up? Is it a 10? Did the number go down? Is it maybe like a 4 or 5 or 4.5? So let's say it went down to a 4.5. We're going to tap again, and we're going to say, oh, this brown, shiny wrapper. It still sort of calls to me. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm struggling with. I want to grab it, a brown, shiny wrapper. Just looking at it, I know there's something good inside. Brown, shiny, glossy. That is a happy color. That is a really happy brown color. So brown and glossy. But now I'm noticing as I'm tapping, it's just paper. It's still brown and glossy, but it's now this is just what's bubbling up. It's really just paper. And now I'm thinking, I don't even know how many people have touched that bag of M&Ms already. It's just paper. Brown paper. Okay, so we're going to take a breath and a break. Now we're going to refocus on the site of the packaging, that brown glossy paper. Now I'm realizing, okay, it's just paper. It's a little wrinkled. It has some creases in it I hadn't noticed before. And now in the middle of a pandemic, I am starting to wonder how many people have touched that bag of M&Ms before me. Okay, it's just paper. So now it feels less compelling to me. There's been an actual shift in how I'm perceiving this bag of M&Ms. Everybody who taps is going to have a slightly different experience, but there will be some shifting like this. And so then you want to re-rate the brown shiny package. Okay, how compelling is it to me now? You know what? It's kind of not, I'm going to say maybe it's like a 1 or a 2. And so then we would tap again because we really want to get this down to 0. Okay, I'm looking at the brown paper packet. Brown paper, just some brown paper. This is where I'm at. It just looks like brown paper. That's all I got right now. It's just brown paper. Nothing special, brown paper. Crinkly brown paper. Maybe even germy brown paper. I don't know. Okay, it's just some brown paper. Holding a snack. So you would continue with the tapping until you could get the reaction or the intensity of how compelling that sight is down to 0. Then you could move on to the next sensation, right? So feel the item. Notice what it feels like in your hand, and notice how compelling the item feels to you then. Give it a number. Start tapping. Okay, now I'm holding this smooth, cold packet of M&Ms. Isn't that interesting? It's always cold. It's always a little cold. And smooth, really, really smooth. And bumpy. I can feel the bumps. Just holding the package, I can feel the M&Ms inside. So I'm going to say the rating for this right now for me is like a 5. It feels bumpy and lumpy, but in a good way. It's like smooth and shiny. Like smooth and bumpy at the same time. And you're going to continue to tap and just tap until each one of these senses related to any particular craving, it doesn't matter what it is, gets as low as you can possibly get it. The other thing that you could do, right? I mean, it's kind of ideal to be methodical, right? So that wherever there's any hidden intensity, we're going to be methodical and we are going to knock it out. But the other thing that you could do is you could kind of evaluate of all of the senses that I have listed here, which one is most intense? Like, which one do you know is the most intense? Maybe it's actually the taste. Maybe you want to start with the taste because that is a 10. That is absolutely really compelling, and it's a 10. So start with whatever feels the most intense. You'll get more bang for your buck if you do that. But if you want to be really methodical, this is one way to do it. And again, if you stay away from feelings or memories that are often associated with food, you will stay out of that deep end of the pool and prevent yourself from getting emotionally overwhelmed, which we absolutely want you to do, is to prevent that. And what I want you to know is that in focusing on the body sensations and the senses, we are also processing the thoughts and the emotions that get activated, even without focusing on them. A lot of that stuff, if not all of it, is going to get processed as long as, even though we're just staying in the body and focusing on somatic sensation. So that is, I hope, really, really clear. Does anybody have a question about how you might approach a particular craving that I can try to answer? I want to make sure people know how to walk away and use this on their own really effectively. And people are certainly welcome to reach out to me if you want to send me an email. I'm happy to help that way. Any questions, Mimi?
No, I don't see anyone with a question, but I will say Henley commented earlier, and she commented and said that the tapping method made her feel calm and grounded.
Wonderful. Who was that, Henley?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful, right? Well, we'll take it. That's awesome. The other thing that I want to mention here is that the touch and breathe technique, which slows the nervous system down, is also a great way to intervene with cravings, because cravings are often associated with some kind of activation that's distressing, that we are seeking comfort from. And so if you slow your whole nervous system down, you may find that the craving subsides just with that, without having to get so methodical about every single aspect of the item that you're craving. So that touch and breathe is a great technique to have in your back pocket. People go into bathroom stalls and do touch and breathe to calm down. People tap in parking lots. You may have seen people tapping on the perimeter while they're driving. It's a pretty versatile tool, and I'm just happy to be able to introduce it to people here today. I think I have one more slide. Let's see. Oh, yeah, so Tapping Works, the nonprofit, which is still being called Tap Into Community as well. These are our goals, I think I mentioned earlier, is to share tapping with the widest and most diverse audience that we possibly can. So we are committed to effective training, ethical training, and super affordable training. So if you know of a group that could benefit from some training, if you are interested in collaborating with us or talking about some kind of a partnership, if you are interested in talking to us about just volunteering with the board, we would love to hear from people. We're in Atlanta, and although now we're virtual, so now we're kind of everywhere. I think that is tapping. I hope it's been interesting. I hope at the very least you're curious. And if you are, then please do read the research and make sure the resources that you go to are credible resources. Thank you, Mimi.
Okay, come on there. Okay, I don't think anyone has, I don't have any questions on here.
Okay.
So I'm going to wait just to see if anyone's going to say anything before we close out. But I will say that we will have, so this presentation was recorded. So if anyone has questions or concerns that they want to answer after this, we'll be more than happy to bring your slides into reference. Because I know that's very helpful. Some people may have been looking at it and then they want to be able to refer back to it. So we will have your slides to refer to.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone has any questions, but if they do, I'll give them a second. We greatly appreciate your speaking on this topic. I really feel like a lot of people don't know about this. So it was new to me when you first told me. And I do think it's something that people can do in their day-to-day morning routine or ritual or throughout the day whenever it's beneficial for them.
Yep.
So for everybody that we had on this webinar, thank you for coming, and please reach out to us. Abby would have loved this presentation, but she had a training to do, but this was great. And if there's anybody who has a question, please let us know while we have her here. We have some thank yous coming up for you in the chat.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So as of right now, everyone's just telling you thank you, but no questions. And we hope that in the future, when we do get back into our studio, our gym, that we'll be able to have you come out as a vendor so people can get some, face-to-face with you.
We would love that. We would love that. And people are more than welcome to reach out to us. The nonprofit is just kind of getting going, so there's lots of opportunity for participation.
Great. So we thank you again, and you will hear from us again because we want to see you at our gym instead of being on this webinar where you couldn't get as much interaction as you would have liked. So thank you again, Ms. Melissa.
Okay, we'll talk soon.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye, Mimi.